Yeah.
Hey everyone, Crystal from DP Slezioni here. I am taking you on a trip today to the south of Italy to visit the region of Calabria. And in Calabria, we have the Ceraudo family estate, located in the Val di Netto area in the eastern portion of Calabria. Let's take a look at a map. So here we have Italy. If we go all the way to the south, we have sort of the ball of the foot of Italy. That's Calabria. So Strongoli is where the Ceraudo family winery is located in the Val di Netto area, so just north of the Ionian coast and south of Ciro, a very well-known winemaking area that also makes fantastic wines. So the Ceraudo family is located here. They weren't always in the wine growing business. Roberto Ceraudo, who started in the wine business in his 20s, he was the son of a grain farmer and had no real interest in the grain business. So Calabria being a very agriculturally focused region, he decided he was more interested in the wine, olive oil, and that aspect of farming. So he found a 100-year-old abandoned estate in the hills of Strongoli, and with help from the bank, was able to purchase it when he was in his mid to late 20s. And so over time, as his friends were, out at nightclubs, partying, all the things that you do as a young 20-some-year-old in Calabria, he was on his tractor and he was restoring the vines and he was relaying some of the brickwork to where the winery is housed and doing a lot of work. And over time, he gained loads of respect for his winemaking, for his olive oils. He also had a small restaurant, so it's very much an area that's food and wine focused, shall we say, and family. He has an amazing family, which I'll talk about in a moment. But it's something that I would say Calabrian people, that they're very hardworking. This has always been an area that has been widely celebrated for its produce. So talk about winemaking, long and proud winemaking history. The ancient Greeks dubbed this area Notria, the land of vines, and it was highly regarded throughout Europe for its grape growing and its winemaking. The Romans went nuts for these wines as well. So, as time has gone on, there's more competition domestically, internationally, but, there is a very, very, very special thing going on in this area of Italy. And I think specifically with wines, they're definitely on the rise as far as interest and the amount of quality wines coming out of this region. There was some time in like 70s and 80s where this was particularly known as a bulk winemaking region, which isn't always a bad thing, but cooperatives were just the name of the game in some regions, and that was just very common. So Ceraudo was no exception, and in fact sold to cooperatives until 1990 was when the first their first family label, where they started breaking off and doing things on their own. So it's a region that's constantly evolving. It's an area that's in economic in times of economic stress, this is an area that does suffer a bit, but I find in those types of places, this is where communities and families really rally together. And I have to say, the people there are just so warm, so compassionate, so kind, and so wonderful. The food is fantastic as well. I mean, you have so much variety. And of course, the wines. The wines are just, I find, fascinating in the sense where you have so much variety, where you take a region like that, and you I think when people think, oh, it's a bulk wine, it's probably going to be big, really fruity, kind of intense wine. It's quite a hot area. I think there's a stereotype that comes along with the wines from this area. But at least in my experience, when I first tasted a range of Calabrian wines, I was blown away. Just the variety of flavors. So you have everything from like a salty, crisp, white or rosé to like a full-bodied, rich red, from grape varieties that I'd never heard of. And, maybe some of you have never heard of. And at the time I thought, wow, like this is something else. I have to visit this region. I have to learn more about this region. So although it's not as famous as regions like Tuscany or Piedmont or the Veneto or other regions, it's one that definitely deserves loads of attention. And hopefully I can turn you on to some of these wines as well. So Roberto has 3 children who he's very close with, and they all take part in the winery as well, in the estate. So his son Giuseppe is an agronomist and soil expert. So he's the dirt man that works hand in hand with his father and in the vineyards. and they basically look at, how to, like, which areas to grow the grapes, and, thinking about the weather and the soil and, all the aspects that go into grape growing. And then on the winemaking side, Roberto, of course, is involved in all of it. His daughter, Caterina, his youngest daughter, studied enology. However, she became more interested in the food and wine pairings and is now one of Italy's most exciting young female chefs. And she runs the Michelin-starred restaurant at the property called Latillo. Definitely worth a visit. And then his middle child, Susie, his oldest daughter, she is in charge of all the marketing and sales. So she went to business school, so she understands the business. So it's pretty brilliant. You have an entire family operation, and they all work hand in hand. I've met them all, and they're just such warm, like I said, warm, kind, generous, passionate people, and their wines express that same passion. So let's talk about the wines first. They make 9 wines in total. I decided not to bring all 9, so we're just going to focus on 3. And since we're in the autumn months, I think everyone kind of turns a switch of, ooh, it's red wine weather. It's time to drink red wines. Yes, but if you're going to drink white and rosé, there are certain white and rosés that can stand up very, very well to the extent, the variety of what is available this time of year. That's like harvest time. There's fowl and game birds and mushrooms and heirloom tomatoes and peppers and like all these just delicious foods, depending on where you are, of course. But I find, it's nice when you can find some white and rosé wines that can stand up just almost as well or just as well as other red wines. So I've cherry-picked these 3. So the first one is called Grisara. Grisara is a name that refers to the hill, so the location of the winery. And this is 100% Pecorello, which is a grape that is native to Calabria. And how would I describe it? I would say it's a weightier white with lots of minerality and citrus. So when I say weighty, when people think citrus and minerality, they think, ooh, it's going to be light, it's going to be bright, it's going to be crisp. I wouldn't call this wine crisp. It's more kind of on that medium body. It's slightly more voluptuous in the mouthfeel. It's heavier on your palate, but not heavy. Let's just say it's more luxurious. That's the right word. And when I say citrus, I would say specifically you get notes of mandarin, you get notes of Meyer lemon, of bergamot, like just these really lovely aromas that translate through to the palate as well. It's not sweet and tropical, but you just get a lot of different, kind of these very bright aromas. And the minerality here, you're only a few kilometers from the sea, so you have this like kind of salty minerality that you'll find laced through all of their wines that just gives a nice lift. So that's the Grisara. The next one is Petelia. Petelia is the name for the town back in the days of the ancient Greeks. This was what the area was called. And the Petelia is 50% Mantonico, 50% Greco Bianco. So Greco is a grape, so Greco meaning Greek. So you'll find Greco at a lot of the south of Italy. Now the clones aren't always exactly the same. So the Greco here is going to be quite different than what you would taste in Campania, for example. But it's really lovely. Mantonico as well. And the idea with the blend of these two is these are even more perfumed. When I mentioned the aromatics and the citrus in the Grisara, this one is take it up even another notch, where if this is like silk pajamas, here we're talking about cashmere pajamas. So slightly more unctuous on the palate. But you again have similar characteristics in lovely citrus, but here you almost have hints of tropical fruits like guava, like unripe pineapple. But it's not sweet. It just gives you this, like, just this intense kind of waft of these like bright aromas that kind of bring you to, like, when you think of, like, I think of this some of you might not agree with me, but I think about when I go to India, like, and you go to like these markets where they have all different kinds of tea and the flowers, and you walk into one of these markets and it hits you in the face, and you just have this, these wafts of like different aromas, sweet, kind of salty and briny, and then you have something else that's earthy. That's what these wines take me to. I think it's a journey in itself, but lovely, lovely wines. Both of these, I would say, can stand up to a little bit of heat. They do quite well with richer dishes, any sort of game bird, fowl, fantastic. You can go Asian here. not too crazy on the spice. That's what I always say with wines. Wines don't like really, really, really spicy food, but I think some can stand up to a little bit of heat more than others. Now, moving to the rosé or rosato. This is the Graia Susie. Graia Susie means Lady Susie. So Susie, I mentioned, is the eldest daughter who's running the sales and marketing. So all the wines are either named after the region, something in the region, like Brusara, the hills, Petelia, the old name of the town, and then of course something closer to home, family members. So this is Susie. Graia Susie is actually one of their most famous wines, and you think about rosé from the south of Italy, everyone thinks rosé from Provence or rosé from some of the more northern areas that are very crisp. Ciro actually makes some fantastic rosatos or rosés, but I have to say I absolutely love Ceraudo's Graia Susie Rosato. So this is 100% Gaggliopo. Now, if you see it spelled, it looks like Gaggliopo, and you think, gosh, how do I pronounce this? It's Gaggliopo, so it's kind of like a silent double G. And I have to say, it's the grape of Calabria. So just as Sangiovese is to Tuscany, as Nebbiolo is to Piedmont, Gaggliopo is to Calabria. That is the iconic red grape. And it's absolutely beautiful. I've had a number of different expressions, and I love this rosato because it's a little bit lighter on its feet. But close your eyes if you put it in one of those, like Riedel. I think a few different companies, actually not just Riedel, make those black wine glasses that you can taste from. That you don't see the color, and so you're leaving your brain to do the work of figuring out if it's white or red. This would be a fascinating one in one of those glasses because I'd probably think it was a red wine. But it's a little bit lighter than their expression of the red varietal. It spends a little bit of time in skin contact, so it kind of has this brownish orangey kind of tinge to the color. Kind of this, you can see in this kind of coppery color has a nice tinge to it. But again, this can go. I mean, I happily drink this with some red meat, game, fish. This is sort of a chameleon when it comes to melding with different flavors. And like I mentioned, it's one of the most popular of their lineup, and really, really special. So those are 3 of the lineup. I highly recommend trying the reds as well. I almost feel bad that I didn't talk too much about the reds. Gaggliopo definitely is the main grape. They do grow other varietals as well. They do a little bit of Chardonnay. I think a lot of producers in Italy you'll see play around with Chardonnay. It's very different. I wouldn't call it a Burgundian style, but really, really beautiful. As I mentioned, all of their wines are kind of laced with this saline kind of, ocean air, minerality, saltiness. But at the same time, all of them just exude luxury. So if you're feeling luxurious, then I definitely recommend you finding a bottle. And when I say luxury, I don't necessarily mean price point. So these are quite affordable wines. You might have a hard time finding them. They're actually quite small productions. So I mentioned this farm, and I mentioned they have a restaurant. They also have a guest house for when you do visit. I think don't get the idea that they make loads of wines. They're actually quite small in production. So if you can find them, fantastic. You will be well rewarded. If you have any trouble finding them and you'd like to find them, just send us a note, and I'll be happy to put you in touch with a retailer or wine merchant or an importer. That's it for today. I hope I gave you a little teaser on Calabria, and it might be one of those spots that you want to put in your 2021 travel calendar. But until next time, thank you so much.